Well, hello and welcome to this live broadcast from Kingdom Advance Network. I'm Jenny Watson and we have an amazing prophetic conversation tonight. I'm delighted to welcome onto this platform my dear friend and amazing mentor, Ann Tate. Hello, Ann.
Hello, Jenny. It's wonderful to be with you and all the people of England.
Well, it's great to have you. And you are live in Texas right now. Is that right?
Yes,
Yep.
correct.
Yeah, that's where you are. So for those of you that don't know, Anne is a general of intercession and a watchman prophet in Glory of Zion and Global Spheres. But Anne is traveling into the nations and doing a lot of work in the States, in the USA. And I want Anne to really just share some things that she's been involved in and to help us in terms of the prophetic thrust. But before we get into any detail, we're in the year of the door. This is the year of the Dalet 5784. And there's lots of prophetic releases been about the door. But as watchmen, and those of us that are praying for our nations, I want Anne to just share with us a little bit about some significant things about the door that we might find helpful as we're looking at how to move forward in the UK in particular. And you've been working with particularly thresholds. Can you explain a bit of that to us and talk to us about what you're seeing and sensing the Lord saying about this year?
Well, it was very interesting the way this unfolded because I began to realize that a lot of the covenants that had been made on the wrong side had never been broken. In other words, the Nazis had lots of covenants with the Muslims, with Islam, and with the Catholics and their covenants. It's much like we know that there are 150 nations that are making these agreements with China. And actually what happens is they come in and they supply funds, but they take your land. And so those are threshold covenants that are between nations. And it's allowing communism to spread and take places, take territories. And so I was watching all of that. And then the Lord, Chuck sent me into Washington, D.C. one time, and I was headed for Washington State, actually. But I could tell that there was anointing on that. So I just waited. And the next morning, the Lord started speaking to me about Washington, D.C. And I thought, well, I'll go down and get Brian to send me into Washington State before I get on the plane. But I am going to take this information that the Lord is speaking to me right now about Washington, D.C., because it continued to happen. And so then it's, as I told you while we were talking before, during Christmas, I did, if you want to know about that, you can go to GZI TV, and it's called Doors, Thresholds, and something, but it was on a Wednesday night prophetic empowerment, and I spoke about it there, and you're free to go and watch that. But it set me on a journey because I was seeing thresholds in a way that I had never seen them before. I was beginning to look at thresholds between heaven and earth, which Moses, when he negotiated with the Lord about Sodom and Gomorrah, where Lot was, and he said, he talked to him, he negotiated with the Lord to to take care of these people. He interceded. He was a watchman. And there were many examples in the Word of things that I found as a result of that. Well, on Christmas, I took 10 days off. My family was gone. They were all in Tennessee. So I had a bit of time by myself. And the Lord, this Omega appeared on my threshold to my prayer room where we hang out when you come. And that perplexed me. But I knew I wasn't going to leave until I heard more about it. And the Lord really did start speaking to me. A lot of times I'm managing other people that are taking journeys or helping them with what they're doing. I'm watching with them on what they're doing, international targets and things like that, as well as going myself. I lived in Kosovo for 2 years. I went to Romania a number of times and did all kinds of prayer journeys in Romania. I circled the entire nation and prayed at every crossroad. I've done quite a few over the years. And so we have to move forward. And when the Lord 5 years ago began to call the watchmen forward, both apostolic and prophetic watchmen began to call us forward, then new revelation began to come to us. And when you get revelation, you gain authority because it's the kingdom is the Lord's and he manages it and he knows what you've got and what you don't have. And it's been amazing ever since then because when I sit down, Chuck sent me into East Texas and suddenly I just knew stuff that I had not had to work to gain at all, but it was attached to the assignment. And it's a spreading out and an increase of prophetic anointing that we may not have had the faith for in other times, or we came to a healing, cleansing place, which increased our vision and our revelation. And I think that 10 days was associated with that for me because Chuck talked about this when y'all were there, when y'all were here for head of the year and going into the new door. And what we have seen in that is that was, and I prophesied about this at starting the year off right. When those angels appeared that Chuck saw in April of 2022, they did not have their swords drawn, but they surrounded the United States of America. And when that happened, that means his kingdom government is beginning to come down. And I don't know of an example of that ever happening before. And I think it has to do with us praying, with us doing these national prayer calls that we've been doing for 6 years, and people gaining authority and maturity. And we're beginning to see some fulfillment of some of those things. So right now, we're focused a lot on the U.S. because we're surrounding the nation. And this week we prayed about Texas because we have border issues, as you know. It's leaking like a sieve. And there's currently an argument between the governor, Abbott of Texas, and the president of the United States, who wants to take over our National Guard. And he's got all kinds of ideas that will not work. We have guns down here, and we use them. So, and we have other states sending in their National Guard to stand with us. And when they said that we had to take the border down, they cut at the wires, we just restrung it. One governor said, I'll load it in the back of my truck and I'll drive to Texas with it. And if you run out of barbed wire down there, I'll bring you some. I mean, it's been amazing. So, but yesterday, what we saw, one of the things I saw, Cheryl and John work with the threshold of the nation. And I could see that when William Penn came in, the Huguenots, when all these people came into the United States that were on Team God, making covenants, that they did righteous covenants. They bought their land from the natives in New York, and they bought the land in Pennsylvania from the natives. They made covenant with them. They honored them. They moved together. But the further it went and the more people that came, they had planted the Masonic, and they weren't the same followers of God. And so we saw yesterday how that works and what happened. We ceased operating out of covenant. And so those things have to be addressed. But our borders are big thresholds. We talked about that several years ago when I was in Scotland with Wales and Scotland and England. And we talked about how that happens and some of those problems that develop as a result of having unresolved issues on thresholds. And there's a threshold in Gaza that is a result of, on that whole side, on the western side of Israel, that's where Sidon and Tyre were, where Dagon was worshipped, where all those little g gods were worshipped. And so it's very exciting at this time for those of us who do work with land issues and are dealing with these things, because yesterday in our prayer room, we had a gentleman that you know, John Bell, who's from the UK. And when we saw this about this seed, he came up and to the microphone and repented for the empire spirit that y'all have been working with there and we are working with here. He said, because we gave birth to that here. So I believe that was a direct result of some of the things that we've been doing concerning this. And it's like it's opened up a whole nother realm of revelation. And a threshold is where first things happen in a nation. And it's where new things can be set in place or apprehended. And the Lord is authority over all. It is his kingdom that is coming down. And I am praying for the UK to be encircled by the angelic, for notable, credible voices to begin to stand up and face and confront things. And so we're in border wars right now here in the United States. So I went back to Chuck's book, God's Unfolding Battle Plan, and I looked at the War of the Nations because that was where he talked about borders, but he's spoken to the whole United States. And I went back to Future War of the Church, and I looked at lawlessness. And that was in 2007 when he revised that. And that was when the Lord had told him, I need you to draw aside and learn how to pray again. That's how I feel now. That there is words and things that we need, and I won't pull them all forth. Y'all will pull forth some and share with us, which we'd be thrilled. And we'll share with you as you're working with these things, because we need the counsel of each other. And sometimes somebody outside your territory can see something going on in yours. It's not a judgment. It is an assist. It's a help when you can see in and say, well, I see this happening. And so when you're coming out of the world and into the kingdom, and Chuck reiterates in those books about how much we need a kingdom mindset. And an empire spirit does prevent you from having that. And we've had as many problems with it here as you've had in the UK. sorting out where does that end and where does this begin. And it's at a threshold. And some of those ancient territorial spirits that have, they've come together to, like a designer dress, hats by somebody, shoes by someone else, purses, and the dress by Ferragamo or whoever. So you get a conglomeration, and you have to look carefully in the spirit to see what the authority structure is and how to work with it. And it's not something you can do overnight or in 15 minutes, and you have to hear the Lord, because he knows all about it. He knows exactly what's there. And we had so many miracles in this last trip that we took that we could not account for. It was just a miraculous hitting the right time and being in the right place and watching the Lord propel us into the place we needed to be in and get us the information that was far above our pay grade. And we were grateful for it. And we can't talk about many of those people because it would be make things more difficult for them in what they're doing.
So, and when you talk about being in the right place and doing the right thing, this is like a team effort. You go to a place. If we talk generally, then you don't have to speak about people. So you've got revelation from the Lord, and I'm trying to get you to help us so that those in the UK might be able to be more equipped on their borders or in their territory. So you draw together a team, you go into a place. Are you then looking to work with apostolic and prophetic leaders in that place, or are you going with a word from the Lord that you are in a place to pray in? And I'd like you to talk about, what do you do when you're in a place? How do you work that out? There's a lot of strategizing, I'm sure. You take time to pray, but then what are you looking for? And then can you talk to us a little bit about, you said about the angelic, because we hear a lot of talk about the angelic, but we want to know how do we begin to activate them in that warfare out at the threshold?
Well, I believe that the reason they've shown up in the way they did in April of 2022 was a series of steps we had taken to hear God and to move into it. And then when we when they came, we had been praying concerning the turn of the United States of America, because we were acknowledging as women and men of prayer, as watchmen, that we were seeing so much idol worship in the United States of America. And we knew that was not the intent of God. And like yesterday, when I saw that big seed, we weren't granted the land. We took the land. Now, the Lord led the pilgrims there. They were in covenant with him. They acted out of that covenant when they did the Mayflower Compact, when they did the things they did. And William Penn, all of those people acted out of covenant. And the Lord granted them access. And when they went in, there were no wars with the natives. They were enlisting, making friends, respecting each other. When it got bad was when the Masonic got planted. And then there were two trees in the garden, one that was evil and one that was good. I believe now the reason that the angels came is because the Lord had faith that his seed would overcome the seed of the enemy. And if you remember last year at Passover, Chuck invited all the nation's first people in, all of the leadership of all the tribes, all the apostolic leaders, all of the leaders of all we got their addresses, their names, and we invited them in. And some came, some didn't. But we invited them in, and we agreed to begin to work together the way that we were intended to from the beginning. We honored and acknowledged their portion, that they had a portion, and that it needed to be honored and acknowledged. So we were, and Texas was as bad as any other state in what they did toward the Native Americans. And so when you start moving out of covenant, because I've been praying over these borders, we've probably taken 5 trips and gone from San Diego all the way to Brownsville, all the way across Texas at the southern border, and yet the Lord was not guarding our borders. And that's the issue, because if you're in the borders the Lord has for you, he guards you in them. So when I spoke on Threshold, I said, sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot. We are complicit with our own demise, our own inability to cross over. And I knew when you came to head of the year that you were in a totally different place than you'd ever been in before, and that you were looking at things with a much clearer eye, and you were seeing more clearly, and that you could move with that. The Lord could use that. I know how bad it is here, but that's not what I'm working with. I'm working with the King of the universe, who wants his pulpit back. He wants his people back. He wants everything that belongs to him in the kingdom to be presented in right order. And if we do nothing but present the United States as his footstool, I want that to be our testimony. I can't control other nations, but I can vote in this nation, and I can make shifts. I have authority. Now, there are times I am sent in by an apostolic authority who knows what my mission is. I don't just go off somewhere, or don't keep it a secret from Chuck. I tell him what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and he reviews it. And sometimes right before I go, he'll call and say, okay, now let's go over this one more time. I'll say, okay. And we begin to speak about it again, so that when he sends me out, he is able to prophesy into it. And we sent someone out a couple of weeks ago who's in the Middle East. And he sent her out with a word, and somebody in the congregation, part of that word was a wedge, said she would be a wedge. And somebody walked up and handed me a wooden wedge to give her. They didn't go home and get it. They had it in their purse. One time we had someone pull a plumb bob out of their purse. Lisa Lyons, one time we were praying about a train, and she's got a brake assembly from a train in her car, and she goes out and gets it. And that you cannot make that stuff up. I mean, but that is the train that we want to get in. We want to get in such revelation. If the Lord says, put that in your purse this morning, and you don't know why or where or how, but you do it, because you never know when the Lord is going to call for you to do something. So we try to stay in the realm of that. But I talk to Chuck. Chuck prophesies over me. Chuck has taken prayer journeys. You know, he's done lots of international work and national. And so it's not like he doesn't know what you're doing. I'm blessed by that. And I got a word at head of the year said I was supposed to duplicate myself. And so I am paying attention to that word and trying to do that but you have to have a great working knowledge of the word and be willing to see it in ways you never expected. And like that Judges 19 that I talked about when I spoke that night, oh my God, I have read that 500 times when it came forth. But you need other people that have skills you don't have. So when we put a team together, I don't want more people than I need, but I want a tight team that I'm not like the 500-pound canary in the middle of. I want them to have weight of their own and different skill sets than I have and come from a different perspective than I do. And that way you get a greater synergy when people come together like that, and you have more authority and you move in higher ways. You're not depending on what just one person knows. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, Anne. Thank you. Yeah, I think we're gaining traction and momentum with dealing with some of the land things, but not to the level that you are in the States. So it's helpful for us to be able to look ahead and say, okay, let's begin to move like that. What else did you say? You said about covenant, and that is covenant with the people of the land, the First Nations people. How would we go about doing that in the UK?
I don't know, because there were, I know when we went to Scotland, they told me that I had an ancient connection that it goes. So I could be, because I came from Scotland. My dad came from Scotland. My mother was part native and English. So I got like 84%. So I'm from the UK in my bloodline. And so I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know how to research that really. But there are people in the UK whose bloodlines would go back that far. They may not acknowledge it or know it, but you look at the past differently because they were given a gift on the land. Now, the Druids followed a different god. That's usually why you lose your land. But it was not granted to the Romans. They warred with everything in the land.
And yet we have a lot of, even in our region here, a lot of Roman roads where the Romans came and did what they did. Yeah. It's
but
very,
we know that Patrick came from a righteous root.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that there's righteous roots there. And but you want to honor the first people if you can find and identify the bloodline.
Mm-hmm.
And see, they would be, because the Romans drove them up past Hadrian's Wall.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be part of what was driven out of Scotland and part of what was became part of the Scots.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not one pure. No, not one. We're all unrighteous to a fault.
Yeah.
And it's a wonder the Lord can use any of us. But you do want to honor that. in every way you can. Honor what their contribution was. I felt like what we did when we went to Stonehenge was very honoring.
That's some time back now.
And it redeemed, because we know the angelic came through that portal.
That's right.
In New Jersey, that night, Chuck was caught up. And that was in 2008 when he saw everything the Lord intended for the United States of America. He saw all those states. He saw those freedom outposts. He saw all of that night after we had done that. And I'm sure that those angels were deployed everywhere.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, working with them now is, the more you're aligned with him, because he's put a portion in them. And the more and so where we are right now, Jenny, I feel, is we are standing outside the promised land, just like Joshua. And Lord Sabaoth is going to show up. Because if you're not building kingdom, you don't need the angels. But when you start building kingdom, and you start thinking kingdom, and you start getting revelation on kingdom, which I know y'all are doing, when that happens, then he will help you enter your promised land. If you don't say, oh, it's too hard, I couldn't possibly do that, that is too much trouble, we'll just go in there however we go in there, and we won't overcome the enemy. And we know that that's going to that will come back to get you. That's what's happened to us. And it's more of a picture for the UK, because you wouldn't have much memory of struggling to get the land in current day UK. But with all of these different people groups coming in of the empire that was created, they don't all have good motives. They don't all worship God. And see, it's like us. We know that we've got to stand up, speak up, grow up, and do what we've got to do to get our nation set on the right course, where it's hard to go to hell from the U.S. That you got to concentrate to do that. That there is enough of the Spirit of God present that you'll be confronted and challenged and quickened and touched by his Spirit in one way or another, over and over again, every day. Just because somebody came by you and gave you a smile, or spoke words of life to you, because you suddenly were in their realm, in their place, wherever they were. And I give out a lot of words in grocery stores and taxi cabs, and in where I travel. I'll ask, because we have so many different people groups here in the United States. I'll say, where are you from originally? That sounds like Nigeria to me, or that sounds like this. And the more we embrace in our churches, in our gatherings, all these other people groups, the harder it is for them to go to hell.
Absolutely.
When they're invited in.
Yeah. Well, we had Chuck with us recently, and he was here just as the storm Isa was taking hold, and he was prophesying into the winds, speaking into the winds, and then we got the winds physically. So, I mean, we're looking for all those signs, aren't we? Just go back to the very beginning, and you talked about a personal experience you had, and I don't know whether everybody caught this. Certainly those that came on afterwards didn't. But you had the actual image of an omega that actually was almost burned into your threshold at your property. That's right, isn't it? So you just sort of brushed over it. But that was almost like a supernatural sign and wonder. we're to expect these things now, aren't we? These things are going to show up more and more. The miraculous, the signs, the wonders, the things that are unexplained in the natural, but they're God beginning to show us we're on the right track. Would you
That's
say?
exactly right. And you know, when I saw that, it took a while because I kept, what are you saying to me, Lord? I mean, that was an amazing event to me. And he connected it to the angel that I got in Wales. The angel who finishes things, the angel of revival who finishes things. Because the day when I went to Blenarnick, I mean, I'm nobody from nowhere. And Cindy Jacobs and all these heavyweights had been in there, and they were telling me all these stories about what they did. And Cindy went out the spirit as soon as the door opened. I just walked in. But the minute I walked in, it was like 10,000 angels balanced on the top of a pin. Because, and what the Lord told me was they'd been there since that revival, and nobody knew how to partner with them. Jenny, I would get in my car and drive to Wales as fast as I could and go and say, is there one here for me? I would. But I saw, and when I went in, I sat down where they had sat. We had been to the church of the brother that was speaking that night when that revival broke out. We had gone there the year before when we were all down in Wales together. And so the Lord started speaking to me about that angel like 3 years later. And he said, the angel of revival who finishes things. It comes to a place where you're stuck in your territory or your society or the group that is supposed to carry God forward. In our case, it would be the church. And you're stuck, and he tells you what's wrong, how it got stuck, and how to keep moving. And I feel like that is what he's been doing. And I feel like I was stuck. And when that thing appeared to me, then I sent it to Chuck several days later. I mean, I didn't at first because I thought he'll think I'm crazy. He'll have evidence now. But he said, interesting. And the minute I got that text, a word came up out of me about that. And he talked about my finishing years and what I was going to be doing and and things I would be doing, and not specifics really, except I realized you're talking about that finishing angel. This is connected to that. So Chuck, after that, sent me to East Texas, and I had this huge sword and I'm dragging it. He said, now cut off all the vines over there. And he's just talking about it. And so Robin Vincent and I start over there, and I've got this sword, and they've got a big sound. And he said, from Canton to the Louisiana border. So I am dragging that claymore sword I've got around that thing. This big spider comes out that has all of her babies on her back. They're not born yet, which tells me that it's the witchcraft is getting ready now to go into the next generation. And so all of a sudden I'm getting all this revelation about what the Faith and Word movement had and didn't have, that allowed all the Masonic to stay in place in East Texas, because they didn't have revelation on how to get free of it. they would do the legalistic thing, I think, trying to get rid of it. But that's not enough. You have to stop being one with it and operating out of the evil eye and all of those things that are a result of that on the bloodline. So when you see those things and you begin to operate with them, you're excited by the revelation. But that angel had to do with that Omega, because you have to finish what you've started. And if our generation doesn't end up in the place we are supposed to finish, then the next generation has a gap they have to overcome. Just like what happened with us in our generation, we've watched huge changes in the church and the restoration of the fivefold. One gift at a time, coming back into place. That is a finishing has to occur. And so the Lord takes me that night. I said, Lord, I don't know how to work with this, but I give up my schedule. And you tell me where that angel has appointments that need to be loosed and finished. And I'll submit to wherever you, and the next place we went was Guyana. And that was quite an adventure.
It was. Yeah.
But I didn't really understand it. And so I'm just like everybody else, learning how to work with the angelic, because those 51 angels I know is not the first time the Lord has sent angels to every state.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it's been different angels with different functions, but this time they're going to have to turn. Mm-hmm. We have got to turn. We cannot continue like this. Mm-hmm. And the idolatrous worship has got to be cut off and stopped. Not because you did something mean to people to make them do that, but because they don't want it. It's like Ephesus. Mm-hmm. They've decided, I'm walking free of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's amazing, Anne, how you're moving and doing what you're doing. I'm wondering if any of our viewers right now have got any questions they want to pose to Anne, and we can see what they are and see if they can be answered. But we've talked about angels, we've talked about thresholds, and is at the moment, Anne, are you continuing to do? Are you on like a particular assignment at the moment, a mission at the moment, or are you in a time of rest where you're waiting on the Lord for the next move, or do you know what your next move is going to be?
I know I'll go back to Washington, D.C. before Passover.
Too long, right?
And I know we're going to do all 50 states. We reopened the war room, and on Tuesdays we're praying, and then we broadcast. We edit it and broadcast it. Chuck is speaking to each state, and the leaders in those states have sent in what they're doing so he can work with them. And then on Tuesday night, he's showing what they have told him they were doing. And then on Wednesday night, they're showing what the prayer was. So this week we're working with Texas. Last week we worked with New Hampshire, and it was during the time they were voting. And we prophesied who would win that vote, and they did. And but it's the function of a tabernacle of David. David was the only king that ruled his kingdom from the tabernacle of David. And when this kingdom rule started coming down, that is our what we know is that he will rule his kingdom from the tabernacle of David. So if we have not been building a tabernacle of David, we need to get busy. Because if we don't have one where we can legislate in the territory, then he doesn't have anything to work with. It's like preparing the way of the Lord. And so if you'll get this image, we are trying to enter into our promised land. And they were circumcised. They had several things they had to do before they couldn't just march in. And the Lord gave them the word, I will help you. You will eliminate all your enemies. Because the Lord was with them. I wouldn't go into we cannot go into the promised land without the angelic.
Mm-hmm.
And how we're aligned with God gives us territories.
Yeah. We've got a couple. We've got a couple of questions, Anne, that we might be able to answer in the last 10 minutes. Let me give you both questions and then you can decide which you want to take first. Okay. John Bell's watching. So John, I know John's with you over there, but he's going to be coming over to the UK and we're going to be meeting up. But John's asking, what are the key places that you see specifically in England and Wales? I mean, at the moment, we're working with this 50-mile radius, and we know that we only need 12 of those to cover the whole of the UK. And we've been to the high places and the key cities in those. But John's asking, are there key places that you see specifically in England and Wales? And then Rosie's asking, the breakthrough, has it something to do with releasing the redemptive words that Chuck spoke of? Chuck spoke when he was with us last Friday about a new level of prophecy, and the redemptive prophecy being that is the highest level in order to bring the highest intention of the Lord, really. So those two questions, Anne, do you think you could have a stab at those for us?
Yes, and I don't want to reveal. I've had several conversations with you concerning targets in England. I'll let you tell John about those. And because I know y'all are in the process of dealing with those, and you can talk with John when he comes. There are some things you don't talk about while you're doing. You talk about them after the victory has been won. And but the other question about what was it, Jenny? What was the other one?
About the redemptive prophecy and redemptive words.
Yes. Yes, because the Lord intended redemption. And so when we're speaking into something, we are uncovering the redemption of it. And so sometimes we go back and look. We're not looking for what the devil is or what he's doing. That's pretty obvious. We're looking for, how did this thing get buried right alongside of the greatest thing that the Lord ever did? But people are like that. We are distorted. Like, I have a friend who is amazing, but we get into 2 or 3 people and she'd disappear. And I knew how much revelation and how much, and I was seeing the fruit of things she had said and done. It was amazing. And so I asked her, I said, why is it you disappear? And it turned out that she had fainted when she was 14 at the prospect of speaking. And she didn't speak again till she was 38 years old. So right next to her greatest gift, the devil dug a hole for her to fall into and stop her voice from operating. So she was very cautious about that. And so people get healed. Lands have to be healed. You have to know that where there's all of these strip clubs and all of this stuff, there's something redemptive under it. The devil is not building just because he can somewhere. There is something that opened the door to let that in.
I've got another question, Anne.
Okay.
This is two in one, really. Jennifer Milne's asking about bloodlines in Scotland and on the land and how to deal with it generally. But Carol's asking, when you trace back your bloodlines, are there specific angels, processes and protocols that we should or could engage in? When you start to trace your bloodline, how do you bring those processes and protocols and the angelic into that process?
Well, you look at your name. For instance, one thing that happened with me is it uncovered because my name, the Lord calls me Anna. That's the name my parents gave me. Now, whether they were Christians or not, it doesn't really matter. The Lord tends to get you named what you need to be named. And I knew that the Lord called me Anna, but I wasn't really that interested in staying up in the temple 24/7. I like to move around more than that. So, although sometimes I feel like I do. But what the Lord showed me was Anna saw in that baby, the government was going to be on his shoulders. She was praying for the government. She was praying for the governor of the kingdom, the promised Messiah to come. But it was because of how it would change everything. Well, that freed me from what I wasn't, because I'm not the same kind of intercessor that some other people are. And we have all kinds here. And I know I can't make myself be that other kind. I can't make it. I can only be who I am as I align with the Lord in every way that I can. I'll be who he designed me to be, and you will too. But we're looking for those same things in the land called England. We're looking for those same things in the land called Wales. What is so redemptive here? What was so redemptive here that the king forbid that they have any prophets? Of course, it's prophetic. He offered to whatever king that was, he was going to murder, kill, hang whoever prophesied from Wales because he got a bad word, which was true. And so you have to look at what is our gift here. What is the real gift here that we have, and what is all of this hell covering up to keep us from seeing it in people and in places on the land, because the land has covenant with God too. So I hope that answers.
Yes, Anne, it does. So there's angels to work with, there's processes and protocols, but we need to be seeking the Lord for what they are and moving with that.
Yes.
Even if that means, when we say moving, even if that means going to somewhere, going and standing on the land, the territory, going and obviously with the correct, if you like, alignment, being in a team situation and asking the Lord for revelation while you're there. It's uncovering those things that have been deeply entrenched in the land for years and years and years to get that redemptive word in there to see it set free. Yes?
Yes, because if you're going because there's a devil there, you don't know what the redemptive word is. You got to know what that devil is stealing and what part of the network he is and how powerful. and then you'll know how to redeem it, because the Lord has a word for all of it. I've stayed in Amos 9 a lot because we need the thresholds shaken. We need the capitals destroyed and the thresholds shaken. And as you go down Amos 9, the Lord is very much informing us about how he works with things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important. It's an important word. And I've been working with that. And also, we're talking about putting our foundations right, because sometimes devils were worshipped. That's true all over the world. But when Jesus comes, he redeems it all. And he has a redemptive word that will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're glad, Anne, that we're connected to you and to Glory of Zion, to Global Spheres. I mean, we couldn't be moving forward as we are without it. So we're glad for that connection. And it'd be good to have you back to talk to us more, maybe to the team and to the in-house family at Cannes, because we've been doing some work with the river that's come to an end now we're concentrating more on the land, and I think there are some of those national assignments that we've talked about for some time now that are getting ready to be opened up. So there are regions that we're working in, and some of those things we could talk more detail and get some strategy with you and the team there. So for those of you that have been with us this evening, if you've been blessed by this and you've learned and gleaned and gained, then you're very welcome to sow in and offer in. We want you to feel that you can participate in that way. We are going to be blessing Anne for her time, and continue to pray for her and the teams that she's involved in, because if they go to higher levels and they do what they need to do, it pulls us up into our realm as well. So we're appreciative of this connection. I can't remember, Anne, when it was the first time we ever met. Can you?
It was in, I don't remember.
It was a long time ago. It was
Oh,
before Stonehenge.
Oh, yeah.
But I know that we've been places, we've seen things and done things, and there's more to come.
Yes.
So it's really good. And some of the comments are really, really encouraging. So great help and encouragement for where we are. That's from Maureen in Kent. People just saying thank you and appreciated what you've brought us with what you've brought to us tonight. And well, it's tonight here. Of course, it's not for you, but we'll see you again soon. Next week, we've got Jackie Tyre with us, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you know about Jackie, because we don't know her very well. So can you just tell us some of her gifts and her strengths so that those that are watching tonight will know to come on next week?
Well, Jackie is someone that I love very much, and we travel together some. And she's part of the team that I'm currently working with on a couple of targets. And we're going to be together at the end of February. She runs a thriving apostolic center, and she's done nothing but grow. And she's on the national call with me. We call every day, and call the 222 call, or the Josiah Company. And so I do. You will love her, and you will appreciate what she has. They call us fire and ice. And Jackie she's not loud or anything, but she is very direct, and she has it all knit together just right. And she hits every base. So she is very organized. She's a teacher. She's a preacher, and she loves the same people we love. She loves Isaac Petrie. She loves Chuck. She works with Dutch and Clay. We all work with the same people. They may not be in the same place, but she's a very close friend and is doing an amazing job. And her husband had an advertising agency, so she's done this work on this studio that she's building a music studio right now. And this apostolic center she's done without Mike's assistance. And Mike is formidable. He just retired or sold the agency, so I'm looking for them to skyrocket as they're moving.
Wow. Wow, it sounds wonderful. We're really looking forward to having her with us, and we want to thank you for introducing us, because I think you encouraged us to say, why not get to know Jackie? So, Anne, it's been a pleasure and a real privilege for us. So thank you very much. And for those that have been watching tonight, thank you for being with us. And we do hope that you'll join us next week so we can introduce you to Jackie and hear what she has to say about what the Lord is doing with her and through her over there in the Atlanta area. So bless you all. Have a great rest of the evening, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye, Anne.
Bye.